here we are with the F-80, and I would do a MiG alley review. However, this plane got a vast majority of its games when I was doing the testing for the review against the Germans. So that being the case, I have a feeling that the matchmaking favors this plane going against the Germans. It was actually 100% in the 10 to 12 games that I flew it out just to find out if I could get a MiG alley review. So we'll just go with it as being a much more likely opponent against the Germans than against the Russians. However, I will still give it a MiG alley review as I have flown it against the MiGs. But first things first, this plane is very similar to the F-9F in my flight approach to it. It climbs fairly well. It doesn't have the greatest top speed. It has in the 900 indicated airspeed top speed on level flight, and that's at about 1,000 to 2,000 meters. It has a good dive speed, and it has a very good turn, which you can turn at about 950. I would say is a safe turn where you won't snap your wings off. So this and the F-9F both have that 950 threshold, which is extremely good to getting away from people, to getting away from MiGs especially, who have the 800 kilometer per hour wing threshold. It has the 650 cals. The 650 cals on this plane are fairly good. It has the M3s, so it's the exact same gun you'll find on the F-80C. I like the ammunition that has the least amount of tracer rounds, because I've found out that tracer rounds seems to skip a lot more, seem to not actually penetrate the target, even if they are the armored piercing and incendiary tracer. It seems like those are less effective than just having the armored piercing and armored piercing incendiary. Other than that, I'll get to some action with this plane and explain a few things as we go along. Here we are at 4,900 meters. This plane still is climbing at 450 plus kilometers per hour. It's doing very well. I'm not doing that at a huge angle, but it's still being able to climb at a pretty good pace due to the fact that I'm not going at a huge angle, and it's still keeping up quite a bit of speed. Against 262s, you're going to be above them. 163s below them. 162s, different story. Those are probably going to be slightly below you, and those are going to have issues climbing past 3-4K. So overall, this plane will be above most German planes and below the MiG-15 for sure. But you do have the edge over the MiG-15 in being able to turn at 950. As far as going against 162s and the other German jets of the like, you'll have a huge advantage over the 162 and the 262. 262 will be able to outturn you. 162, not as much, but it still has a very good turn rate. But you're always going to be the aggressor in this plane, or at least you should be, because you should have the altitude over them. But that being the case, it's still going to take a lot of yo-yos, a lot of Immelmans to basically direct yourself in the right direction to really get a good shot on these planes. And most of them are more agile, as the roll rate isn't as good on this plane as the 262 or the 162. And like in most jets, any critical to a wing will do a lot of damage. And a black wing that low definitely will cause it to crash. Another example, and this is more just showing the 650 cals. They are fairly effective. You're going to have to get close to make them count. They have a high velocity, but they do spread out a little bit over a long distance. So get to your convergence rate. And there you go. Had he turned a little bit more, he probably would have got out of that, but ended up getting the critical. My teammate ends up shooting him down here right afterwards, so we end up getting another 162 down. And here we are against 262s, and the trick against 262s is never get below them. That's when they can actually dive and get speeds that will keep up with you and actually can really take you out quite quickly with 430 millimeters. So just avoid getting below these things. If you do make a pass through, yo-yo right back up. And as you can see, they're stalling out. Just missed my shot there. And you really can catch these planes in a lot of trouble when they start trying to climb and attack, because they slow down extremely quickly. Their energy retention in that regard is very terrible. and as long as you can just get one crit on a wing, they're gonna most likely end up having a huge difficulty, first off fighting, and second off even keeping that plane in the air. And we're gonna come back to that later. So here we have the pass through where I'm going down, dropping down on a 262 again. He pulls a split S maneuver, he pulls away, and I'm getting my speed back up for another yo-yo. And this is where you always want to look around, see your map, and be able to avoid anything, because this is when you're most vulnerable. You're slowing down, and you have a very broad side of your plane that's showing to the enemy. And I just got targeted by someone, so immediately when you see someone target you, when you see them have a flash, is when you're really going to want to start your descent approach and just kind of flip that plane right over and dive right back down to the ground and get that speed back up. I was lucky to get out of that one, but that's where you're gonna most likely, if you fly this plane a lot, that's where you're most likely gonna die, is in situations like that. When chasing a 163, they're a little bit more agile than you. You can turn at a higher speed that they can, but they can turn a little bit sharper. The one nice thing about this is you have a ton of ammunition, so you can keep on shooting just to get that crit. Right there was when that 262 that I shot before just went down. And this plane is pretty messed up. His wings gone. Now it's really gone. So this can do a fairly good job against the 163, and this can do a really good job against a 262. You can do a really good job against a 162. Against MiG-15s is where you're going to have your issues, and that's where you're going to have to fly this, very similar to an F-9F. And I know in an F-9F you're going to get more games in MiG-15 battles than you will against the Germans, so it's just something to definitely look at the F-9F review when I do a MiG alley review compared to this, because they are very, very similar planes that when you actually fight against MiG-15s, those are the two different planes that have the exact same tactics that you're going to have to employ to actually take down a MiG-15. And here I have the F-80 with matched up with the F-80C, so I was going to guaranteed get a game in MiG Alley. And here's some food for thought. That is it's not a fully maxed out F-80C, but it's nearly a fully maxed out F-80C, and just look at how much faster my fully upgraded F-80 is at climbing compared to the F-86. Just a fantastic difference in planes. As you can see, the MiG-15 was actually quite higher. It was about 1,000, 2,000 meters higher than I was initially, but also, as you can see, DT is quite a ways back in his F-86. It seems as though this is pretty wrong, that the F-80 is actually climbing faster than the F-86, given that, first off, the F-86 is supposed to have a much greater climb rate than that. Should probably have a lot more thrust, and seems like it's lacking a little bit in that department. But that being the case, this F-80 is still able to do its thing and get some fairly good altitude, and if MiG-15s are down chasing after an F-86, you can actually get better altitude than a MiG-15, which in a level 18 F-80 is gravy. That's awesome. Can't ask for much more than it. And if a MiG-15 does end up want to give you a go at a head-on, I mean, more than willing to take that in F-80. And 1-for-1, I'll take that any day of the week. Due to the fact that you're most likely going to get matched up against the Germans unless you do fly with a higher tier plane like the F-9F or the F-86, this is going to be a take it with a grain of salt. MiG alley rating, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It can do its fair share, as it does climb seemingly better than the F-80C, and it can get altitude fairly well. It does have those M3 machine guns, and it does have the high turn speeds, which allow it to, if you're getting chased by a MiG-15, at least try to break off a wing of a MiG-15 by making a sharp turn. Hopefully they follow through with you, and that's where this plane's going to have advantage. Most of the time you're not going to get altitude like I got there. That was a convenient assist from an F-80C who went in and all the way. As far as the F-80 doing well against Germans, it's probably going to be a 10. There's not many planes that are going to really compete right now that are Germans. I mean, if it's a 163 and you're having issues with it, you can always just outrun it and outtime it and wait till it lands, then shoot it down. But against the MiGs, it's definitely, it can be a MiG killer. You're going to be at a disadvantage most of the time, but used properly, this plane definitely is a good plane. I mean, I would definitely recommend getting this plane, and you're definitely able to compete. You may not be the top tier competition for a MiG-15, but you'll definitely be scary enough where they won't just ignore you. So you guys have a good one, and peace out.